Hi, and welcome to this quickie overview of learners with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. So I just want to give you like a 15-minute run through of the discussion we were going to have in class, and then within it I will be mentioning the activities that will be posted next on this module. I'll be putting links below after the link that you got for this video to access the documents to complete the activities. So anyway, ADHD is a disorder that is written in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that psychologists use and doctors use to diagnose different disorders, which then can get a child special education services if they indeed need specialized instruction to benefit from their education. So it's frequently misunderstood, and I think that's why it's important that we talk about it. And it's relatively a high incidence disability, and it's growing. So if students are eligible for special education under IDEA, the reauthorization 2004, you'll need to have a good understanding as well. If not eligible for special education, students may be able to get accommodations under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So they wouldn't have an IEP, but they would have accommodations available to them. So how is it defined? It's defined as a persistent pattern of inattention or hyperactive impulsivity that's more frequent and severe than typically observed with individuals at a comparable level of development. So compared to same age peers. It's characterized by a pattern of behavior. It has to be in more than one setting and results in performance issues at school, in social, educational, and work settings. There is a definition you can find at the CDC website. If you click on this and scroll down for the criteria, you can read it there. This PowerPoint is posted on Moodle, so that's where you can actually get that link, or you can just write it down from here and type it in your internet browser. So basically, though, it's an inability to attend or focus. It has a neurological basis, meaning it's brain-based, and some of the strategies you're going to use for students with ADHD are going to be very similar to students with a learning disability, which is going to be the next presentation that I give. So any of the strategies would go either way, most likely for students with ADHD or a learning disability. Here's another link, which is an interesting little checklist. You could use this for your own students or your own children. It's also on the CDC website, but it gives you kind of a little quiz that could help screen for a child to see if they have potentially ADHD. But ADHD is a specific information processing problem that's related to a student's inability to attend to or focus on a given task. So there is the organization, which is Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, CHADD, CHADD. That's a good resource, and they define ADHD as a condition affecting children and adults that is characterized by problems with attention, impulsivity, and overactivity. So what are the signs of ADHD? Well, hopefully you were able to look at the quiz or see the checklist on the previous page's website. But in a nutshell, you probably see problems with paying attention. That's what they call inattention. Being very active, which is called hyperactivity, and acting before thinking, which is called impulsivity. And you can see them citing the Nitschke disability fact sheet here that you have access to on Moodle as well. So the DSM-5 is a new reauthorization of that manual, and as far as students are concerned, nothing really changed from the 4th edition to the 5th. It really just changed in terms of how adults are diagnosed. So we still have these two subtypes of ADHD. One, inattentive type, where the student can't seem to get focused or stay focused on a task or activity. And hyperactive type or impulsive is where the person is very active and often acts without thinking. Some students have both inattention and hyperactivity, impulsivity, so that would be the combined type. Children with the inattentive type of ADHD really just don't pay close attention to details. You'll find them not focused on playing or schoolwork, not being able to follow through on those instructions or finish their schoolwork, difficulty staying organized with a task and an activity. They get distracted easily and lose things easily. These students really need support organizing themselves, need a lot of color coding and organizational skills to be taught to them, modeled for them, and worked through so that they can develop some way to cope with the ADHD inattentive type. Now, children with the hyperactive impulsivity type may be manifesting this disability differently. They may be more likely to fidget and squirm, stay out of their chairs, run around, climb constantly, maybe be a little bit loud when you're asking them to be quiet, just being impulsive and not being able to remember and think to stay quiet, talking too much, blurting answers, having trouble waiting for a turn, interrupting or butting in. And you can imagine that these children, although maybe quite wanting to be social, could have difficulty getting along with peers. Now, as you read in the textbook, ADHD would come secondary. It can't be the reason for the poor educational performance can't be because of a other medical condition or a learning disability. So you can see a list here of things that would not qualify someone for ADHD if these were seen through the evaluation and eligibility process. So most of them really have to do with some health factors that could be causing problems with learning, or learning disabilities like the central auditory processing disorder, dyslexia, etc. Now, ADHD represents one of the most common chronic conditions of childhood. We're seeing a lot of growth in this diagnosis. It could be because of awareness and better diagnostic procedures. It could be something environmental. But in the federal categories for special education disabilities, it does mention that ADHD would be appropriate under the other health impaired or OHI category. But they could also be eligible under emotional behavior disability, or if they had a learning disability, that would be the primary disability and category served under. Now, there's a Connors 3 activity. You see the star. That's going to be posted next on your module sheet, so you'll click the link on that to look at a sample teacher score sheet of the Connors 3, and then you will respond to just a few questions to guide you through that document. This should give you a pretty good idea about how ADHD is evaluated. The Connors 3 is pretty much the gold standard evaluation that you'll see in the schools, and it'll give you an idea about what characteristics are found to detect that ADHD could be a problem with learning. So make sure you complete that activity. I think you'll find it interesting and relevant to you as an educator. We don't really know exact causes of ADHD. There could be a number, but we do know it's neurological. Therefore, there's some misfiring of neurons in the brain. Why? Some hereditary factors and environmental factors kind of blending together could create these issues, but we don't really have any definitive answers on that. However, just overall, I think behavioral inhibition and executive functioning are going to be those primary representative characteristics of pupils with ADHD. That inattention is going to look like a student makes careless mistakes, has difficulty sustaining attention, whereas the hyperactivity uh, could cause a student to fidget, not stay seated, and impulsivity would really make it difficult for them to not interrupt and stay seated. Now, along with this could come some social and emotional issues. So, regulating emotions, being able to self regulate and calm yourself to think through problems are the emotional issues, and that plays into social interaction and engagement. Executive function problems. What is executive function? Well, it's really the decision making processes that go on in the brain. So after we receive input through our senses, we have to make a lot of decisions about what to do with that information. So if there are problems in executive function, or that decision making process, you're probably going to see students who aren't able to solve problems easily. Their timing will be off. They're inconsistent. That inhibition makes it so they can't resist those distractions or wait till later to get the reinforcement. So those, you need to consider that they have problems working toward long-term goals for those reasons. That emotional regulation problems I was speaking about in the previous slide make it seem like they have a very low tolerance for frustration and overreact to things, making them seem moody. But overall, I think there's going to be poor judgment because the executive function basically is decision making and judgment. So what do we do? Well, we need to consider antecedent interventions and things that can happen before the behaviors occur. So make sure you're consistent with your rules, schedules, assignments. Make sure their students have plenty of opportunities to practice those, being reinforced for those, and then you need to make sure they know when there's a change. You need to provide collaboration. You need to support students in their work with them, break it down for them, make sure it's at their level, and then lots of choices. Students need to have a little bit of power and control, so giving them choices is an excellent way to do that. Because they might be have poor inhibition, you need to make sure they know what that reinforcer is going to be and when they're going to get it. And some students who can't wait might need to have that distractor with them during the class time. Consequence-based interventions are those things like positive reinforcement, response cost. That means taking away those tokens they got for positive reinforcement. And then, of course, to be more independent, we want to move towards self-management so that they can be aware of their own behaviors and reinforce themselves for those. Now, lastly, just really want to combine that self-regulation and direct instruction. If you remember, direct instruction is providing a model of the skill that you're teaching them. Give them guided practice until they're ready to do independent practice, and then you need to train for generalization. Okay? One student with ADHD may have trouble starting a task while another has trouble ending one and starting the next. Each student needs different help. Be sure that you're aware of the specific student's needs. And then there's an activity about Matthew. You see it spelled incorrectly here. Let me get this. You need to read that case study and then respond to the discussion questions. I think you'll find it interesting, Matthew's situation, and I do hope that by completing this module and the two activities that are following, that you'll have a pretty good understanding of ADHD. Please also do make sure you've read the chapter in the text. Have a wonderful day.